listening to Cinema Spin. Hello, everybody. I am Matt.
I am Jason.
And welcome to a brand new episode of Cinema Spin.
Hot off the presses.
Yes, I mean, you've waited this long. It's time to finally...
Right. It's another
counting
week.
the minutes to the next Cinema Spin. Did nobody ever. Well, we can pretend, can't we?
Yes. There's got to be a super fan or two out there somewhere.
We're hoping at least one. All right. Leading off and playing left field tonight is a film called KIMI, now available for streaming on HBO Max. Oh, sorry for the baseball metaphor, but there's a lockout and all this, and we don't know when baseball's going to start, and I just... I'm getting frustrated, Jason.
Yeah.
Millionaires can't agree on a contract to play baseball.
Yeah.
That's kind of sad.
With billionaires, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sort of seems at this point like it's just sort of nitpicking and gamesmanship, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like they are that.
They know what each other are willing to give in on, but they're still asking for things that they know the other side's not going to give in on.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But hey, at least they've agreed on the universal DH.
Yeah. But I feel like I can't full tilt bitch about that until the season starts.
Oh, God, I can.
So
Okay.
yeah, I took my frustrations out in our stupid intro here, but
Okay.
Anyway.
Batting off.
KIMI is our movie, and it was directed by Steven Soderbergh, written by David Koepp, and stars Zoe Kravitz in the main role of Angela Childs. Angela suffers from a severe form of social anxiety called agoraphobia, which was brought on by an assault she was victim to, and seems to have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Angela works from home in her beautiful loft apartment as an analyst for a tech company called...
Amygdala,
that's right.
right, which is the part of the brain that controls aggression.
Since we talked about that before we went to the air, I forgot how to say it yet again.
Yeah, and fear.
Amygdala is the maker of a smart speaker for home, very much in the vein of Apple's Siri or Amazon's Alexa. Amygdala calls their product KIMI. One of Angela's jobs is to go back through the problematic interactions with KIMI and improve the code to better serve the customers of the company. While listening to one of these interactions, Angela believes she hears something sinister lying beneath the background noise and music of the recording. Using advanced music editing software and equipment, she is able to strip away all the extra noise and get to the heart of what is being heard on the recording. A cry for help and perhaps a murder. Jason, when you watch KIMI, what'd you think?
Well, first of all, I thought about, in a good way, I thought a lot about the paranoid techno thrillers of the 70s, like
Conversation.
The Conversation, especially, right? And Day of the Condor, right? And I thought of also a lot of the, there's been a lot of movies, not many of them very good, the last 10 years or so, that have a lot of deep-seated anxieties about the current, all the current technology and the current surveillance state.
Right.
I mean, movies like The Conversation and came out during the Nixon administration, when everybody was like, wait, when
is this lamp bugged?
Yes, yeah, there were legitimate concerns over the surveillance state, and now, of course, again, not so much from the government, but from private organization, private companies. There's a lot more concern about the surveillance state, and I think this movie is a lot. It presents its anxieties dramatically, but at the same time, it isn't hysterical about it.
Right,
so
right.
It strikes a good middle ground along those lines. I think it is the best movie I have seen so far. Surely there will be a lot more movies made about this, but it's the best movie I've seen so far that deals directly with the pandemic, right? It deals with directly with COVID, and this is painted as sort of a side issue, but also it's kind of, it's a real important part of the context here, that she is suffering not just from agoraphobia, but suffering in the midst of this pandemic, and it does a good job of kind of forefronting all of the anxieties and inconveniences we have, both big and small, as it related to the pandemic, and all the tensions that are sort of arising because of that.
Because even the most mentally fit among us,
right?
Some of us were tested during this.
Yeah. My favorite is the remote dentistry that has to go on. She gets a toothache at one point, and her only way she can't leave her apartment. her cavernous apartment, by the way.
Yeah, it's a giant.
We'll get back to that, right? But so she gets a toothache and she has to call up a dentist, and he's like, "Can you tilt your head back a little more? Can you pull can you feel around your gums? How does that feel?" Right? But that don't we all kind of feel like that? We all feel like that even for important things, we can't quite go out the way that we used to, So I think so. Zoe Kravitz gives a really good performance here, I think, in a tough role because she as an actress has a kind of natural warmth and charisma, and that's dialed way back because this character is supposed to be a lot. She's helpless in a lot of ways, and she's supposed to be sympathetic because she's so vulnerable. But at the same time, she's cold to the touch and very off-putting. Right. She's really sort of confronting people with her boundaries, and Zoe Kravitz does a great job in this role of making her sympathetic, but at the same time, like I said,
unapproachable.
Unapproachable and cold to the touch. So, and a lot of that has to do with her posture in this movie. I mean, this is one of the many details that go into constructing the better aspects of this movie have to do with the little tiny details that Soderbergh and his cohorts get right. And she has Zoe Kravitz presents Angela with this posture that always seems kind of defeated, right? I mean, even when she's alone in her apartment, she seems like she that she doesn't want herself around, and she knows that you don't want her around, right?
right.
So like she's trying to disappear, all of that said, I was at about, this is a 90-minute movie, at about the hour mark, I was thinking, boy, this is a real this is good Soderbergh. There's good Soderbergh and there's bad Soderbergh. Soderbergh is a workaholic. He has made at least one movie per year for the past
maybe
30
one
years.
Since this podcast
yes, and maybe one since this podcast, right? Sometimes he makes two a year, and the quality of those movies differs dramatically, right? And about 90, and about an hour into this, I was thinking, wow, this is really good Soderbergh. Then arrives the last 20 minutes of this movie, which I thought were just horrible.
I loved the last 20 minutes of this movie.
Are you kidding me? I hated that.
And like an hour into this movie, I was kind of like, oh, this is kind of losing its steam a little bit. And I loved the last 20 minutes of this movie.
Oh, my God. I thought all of a sudden it's... So the screenwriter here is David Koepp, who has been he's the sort of go-to writer for major commercial projects. He wrote Jurassic, some of the Jurassic Park movies, including the original. He wrote the original Mission Impossible, among others we can name. And I thought for him too, quality differs. For the first hour, I thought he's kept really doing it well, and then the last 20 minutes, I just felt like. So first, okay, well, we'll get into it in a little bit. You tell me what you think. Your general impression.
I was telling
then we'll argue.
I think this is very close to if I was a movie maker, and I'm not. This is the kind of movie that I would make. Movies that are very simple, have small characters, and not a lot of extraneous stuff. Fairly quickly paced.
Right.
Moves on from one thing to the other. That's
very well paced.
So I like that about this movie. Again, a lot of things you said. I did enjoy the performance and the feeling that the movie gave me as far as her phobias and the pandemic. I thought, like we watched that movie with what's the last agoraphobia movie we were with?
The woman in the
Amy Adams.
Amy Adams,
that
right?
stunk,
Witnessing. Yeah, that was again.
And this movie is sort of starts out with a little bit of homage to Rear Window,
right? Yeah, exactly.
But it doesn't stay with that concept. There's a little bit of that, but then she actually does go out when she has to. And I liked the stuff that happened, with some of the modern technology with her being tracked with her phone. Not that it's the first time we ever saw it, of course.
Yeah.
Things we've seen before, but I thought it was pretty well done here.
Yeah. They make all of that stuff, all the techno thriller stuff that we've kind of seen.
And I thought that there's a scene I liked with where she gets actually pulled into a van, but it's super close to a protest.
Yeah.
And people witness it and come to her aid.
That's a really gripping scene. Yeah.
And when it came to the ending, I'm probably not going to fight you as far as what you. I think I know what your problems are going to be, but I just sort of liked the way it was like she was just tired of being the damsel, and just flipped the switch and just. I thought it was something unexpected from what I would that we would have normally resolved itself. It didn't go the panic room route there at the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I actually really thought it was cool. And that's what sold me on the movie, actually.
I will meet you halfway in that I can see that the general gist of the end of this movie could have worked for me, right? I think the problem begins, and we'll get into slightly spoiler territories. We'll try to keep this as sort of general as possible. A few problems for me. One is, so first of all, everything that we've learned, there have been a lot of tiny details that have been sort of dropped throughout this movie up until then, that all of a sudden come back in this very, I thought, heavy-handed and contrived way there at the end. And one of them has to do with a character that skulks around and all of a sudden shows up and is...
I knew that was going to happen, though.
Shows up and is what? Important? No. I mean, there's no reason why except for the alleged, kind of poetry of setting up this character to be one thing and he turns out to be something else there at the end.
See, I don't think that they were setting that up that way.
Well,
I think he was.
What is the point of that? What is the point of Kevin exactly?
He saved her life.
But he doesn't. She doesn't need that.
She does at the point he shows up.
Well, no. I mean, something else could have happened that would have allowed her to.
Well, okay, Jason. Something else could have happened.
Well, no. Well, something. But it doesn't require a character whose motivations make absolutely no sense, right? I mean,
I guess if you thought he was a pervert from the beginning, but I sort of thought, oh, he's going to come back in and be. I thought he was going to be a hero character just because of the way they.
Even so, there's no reason for him it doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for him at the end to pretend like he knows her, except that the dictates of what he's about to do in the plot.
He's the Jimmy Stewart. He knows what everybody's doing. That's the whole point.
Yeah, but no, that just doesn't make any sense.
That's what that is. No. But that's the point, though, right? I mean, that's really what they're going for.
Is that he's the
expectation is she's Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah,
but he's Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah. Still, I don't buy that. Also,
I think that's the.
Also, I don't.
That's the idea which this movie was sold. I think. To begin with.
Right there's that's my that's a technical term in film criticism. Yeah.
Okay.
No. And also, yes, I like, and also it's inevitable that she eventually begins to sort of to stand up for herself, right? Mm-hmm. But this movie it flips that switch too quickly, where she, and sort of embraces this very Hollywood idea that the cure for PTSD is more trauma, and then that all of a sudden a traumatic person is cured by being even more traumatized, and now all of a sudden, boom, she's totally in control of the situation, and also. Turns into this combination of MacGyver and Jackie Chan, right? I mean, she's doing parkour basically at the end of this movie, and then she's using duct tape to turn something that isn't a weapon into a weapon, right? In a callback to one of the Lethal Weapon
I don't know
movies.
if I saw anything she did that I would describe as parkour. They go to establish that she knows the person who built the thing, and obviously there's a false roof. There is between those places.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have a problem with any of that.
Oh no, I thought all of that was just it was corny in a way that was totally out of the tone of the rest of the movie, right? Now, I mean, if you're gonna make a movie that's kind of corny like that, then that's one thing. But this movie up until then was it was doing so well. It was doing so well being sort of a smart movie.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden it's kind of stupid.
I don't know if
with
I know where you're coming from, but I don't necessarily agree that it's that. I mean, the tone definitely does switch there.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was kind of cool that the thing that caused all the problems, the KIMI device, is kind of used to save the situation.
Yeah, well, I like that. I mean the kind of like, I mean, if you make the bullet points about what's going to happen, if you just laid out for sort of the bullet points of what was going to happen in the third act of this movie, I think I'd be like, okay, well that makes sense, and I like that, and I like that. It's just the way that it's done is adopts a tone of silliness that I thought was way out of touch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
let's explicitly get into.
Depends how silly you find it, I suppose.
Let's explicitly get into spoilers for a second, right?
Okay.
So spoilers. If you're interested in this movie, I think we both agree that first hour or so is good. The thing we're fighting over is the last 20 minutes or half an hour, right? So we're going to get into some spoilers now. So warning.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're supposed to believe that all of a sudden she's going to not just be able to kill these guys, but be able to kill them with a nail gun. I mean, that's just a different movie, right?
Pretty.
Sure, it can be an effective weapon if you duct tape it back.
Well, that just remains
to expose the
Well, just that disables the safety mechanism,
right? That allows the nails to shoot out, right? I'm not denying that you can kill somebody with a nail gun. I'm saying that there's nothing in what we've seen of her up until that moment that would allow us to think that she is this person who can improvise a weapon like that, and then use it to just.
She's proven to be quite clever. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't find that to be.
Yeah, I mean, it just.
What could she find up there? She could have found a shotgun up there and come down with the shotgun. What's the difference? You know what I mean? It's
well, because a shotgun would have been basically normal. Right?
Yeah, but it's cooler to see somebody get killed with a nail gun.
But this didn't strike me as a movie that was going for. It was going to be the kind of movie that in the third act thinks, oh, you know what would be really cool here? Somebody getting shot in the head with a nail gun. I think the tone just totally threw me, right?
Yeah, I think that's what I liked about it. I think it is.
Well, okay. I did not. I really hated the last 20 minutes of this movie to enough that they tainted my view of what had come before. I just wish it had.
So your ending, she just crawls in a ball and takes the shot, huh?
I'm not saying that at all. I mean, I've
credits roll, people cry, it's sad.
Right,
she
dies. That. No. 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 I like I said. I mean, I don't necessarily. I like the way in which she, like you said, she uses KIMI, the device against them.
Come on, man, sabotage.
Yeah, I love Sabotage, right? It's one of my favorite songs of all time, right? But then again, why can't they just yell, KIMI, turn off Sabotage, right? They have to like sit there with.
Well, they pretty much do, right?
It plays for a long time,
play for a while,
and they can't say, KIMI, turn up the lights. I mean,
they do say stop though, don't they? I think that's how they get it to stop.
No, he physically turns off, because I remember this. Because I'm like, he physically turns off the stereo, right?
Oh, okay.
So I just thought the third act of this movie, the actions of the movie, the her, I don't know, kind of taking control of things and her using the device and everything to sort of save herself is not a bad idea. I just thought the tone was goofy, and goofy in a way that I thought.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't
really
holding
a fumble in the red zone.
I wasn't holding the tone previous to that in any kind of high regard necessarily. So
I think that's a big difference then, because I was really into this movie for about an hour, right? And I remember thinking at about the hour mark that, like, boy, this movie's only 90 minutes. They have a lot to do, and how they did it was not great, as far as I'm concerned. I'm sort of stunned. I can't believe I thought we were going to be on exactly the same page about this.
Nope.
So,
I mean, I really liked the ending of this movie. I can't say it enough.
Ugh, gross.
I was super when I texted you saying we should switch movies. I was pretty pumped about this.
Oh wow, I was convinced that you switched movies because you wanted to say exactly what I was going to say. Like, look, I like this movie until the last 20 minutes.
Nope.
Wow. So we don't disagree much, but we are 180 on this one.
And I've already recommended this movie to people several times.
Oh, okay. I also sort of
hated to ask them. And
I also sort of hated how contrived it was. I mean, now that we're sort of in spoiler territories about how, like, she mentions the nail gun in the first part of the movie, just sort of casually.
Everything's contrived, though.
No, not like this. I mean, I just didn't think. I didn't think this was going to be that kind of movie. This movie just seemed more. It seemed more sophisticated to me. Up until the end than the movie that I got in the last 20 minutes. And I guess I was just fooled because at first I was wondering, well, what is the significance of this construction going to be? Right. But then throughout the movie, there's all this really, really irritating background buzz from upstairs that only sort of contributes to the sense of anxiety and the sense of just the general sort of edginess and annoyance of everything. And I thought, oh, well, that's an interesting touch and a light touch. You know, it's not going to have to turn out that there's going to be this major significance of the upstairs construction.
Yeah, see, I think I never looked at this any more than like a 90-minute kind of lark of a film. You know, I just kind of which is what I tend to kind of like. I like a tight, film that doesn't waste my time with a lot of high-minded ideas because we didn't do a lot of that fancy book learning where I was from.
Right, high-minded idea, right? Where I come from, we shoot people, but we kill terrorists with nail guns.
That's right.
Or I guess computer hacker hitmen.
I just give it credit for not being a shotgun again.
I would have preferred something more realistic. So two things I want to make note of is our old friend Derek Delgadio.
Yeah. Playing a small little role in this.
Yeah, of In and Out fame, and doing a good job, I think. It should not surprise us that he's a
certainly
good actor.
Not a demanding role, but he did fine with what he had.
Yeah. Also, the thing that sort of bothered me about this, but it does scan with reality, is the idea that there are Eastern European slime balls tracking every minute of our lives and they're so evil they're doing it right in front of their elderly mothers, right?
Because they all stereotype they still live with their parents, of course,
right? Yes. So, but that right there though is one of those is one of the kind of loving details of this movie. Those kind of unexpected kind of loving details of this movie,
right?
That I was really digging and sort of admiring. That said, Eastern Europeans and Russians as bad guys make very easy targets these days.
That's true. I think Soderbergh is probably thinking about his next movie before he finishes each film. Because he's always mentally on to the next project.
Yes,
I always felt like that. I felt like that with him.
He could work less. He could take.
I bet the studios. I bet he doesn't ever go over budget.
Remember when he retired? He was retired for 2 years. Back in 2013, he retired.
He'd done all the Ocean's movies and
right. And then it turns out, like 6 months into his retirement, he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm actually sort of executive producing this." This series called The Nick, for this 10-episode series called it. Everybody, pretty much everybody was like, "Yeah, that's about as retired as we thought you were going to get." And
he is working.
Then all of a sudden, he's back to making two movies.
Basically, making television now, right? Though technically, I guess.
I guess, yeah. Right, well,
I mean,
depends on who you ask, but I do also love that a major plot point of this is how these personal devices of ours, like KIMI, they turn on constantly just because we mention their names, and then we have to shut them off, right? So that's fun. That was a fun.
My favorite part about it is like Alexa is when it just turns on without anything every once in a while.
Yeah, right.
Just turns a circle, and you're like,
yeah, you're like, what's going on? Right? Yeah. No, I don't recommend. Do not recommend.
Mixed opinion on KIMI.
Yeah. So, okay.
See, now I would, watching that, don't know if I would have thought for sure that you would like it, but I don't know if I didn't consider that would be your issue with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, I guess that's going to do it for KIMI. We'll take a quick break and be back right after this. Welcome back to the second half of Cinema Spin. It's time to go back a ways.
20 years even.
20 years.
To the year 2000. To the year 2002.
How alarming is it that something in the 2000s can be 20 years ago?
Exactly.
That hurts.
Right. Yes. Somebody born in 2001 is going to be able to drink this year.
Hello, mortality.
Yeah, right. Anyway, that aside, so the movie we're talking about is the 2002 movie The Road to Perdition.
Or just Road to Perdition.
Is there no road?
There's no the.
There's no the? I'm going to cross out the. Okay.
I've done that all week.
Oh, okay.
And
so
it's just Road to Perdition.
So much for definite articles. It's just Road to Perdition. Okay. Anyway, so Road to Perdition is set in 1931, and it stars Tom Hanks as a mob enforcer named Michael Sullivan. Yes, you heard that right. Tom Hanks is a mob enforcer named Michael Sullivan who works in Rock Island, Illinois. You also heard that right. Rock Island, Illinois, a real mob hotspot, or a real hotspot for the Irish mob. And he works for his surrogate father and boss, John Rooney, played by Paul Newman. Michael has a contentious relationship with Rooney's impetuous and violent son Connor, played by Daniel Craig in an early performance. And when 12-year-old Michael Jr. Witnesses a murder, Connor goes after the Sullivan family, killing Mrs. Sullivan and the youngest child and sending Big Michael and Little Michael on the lam. The former enforcer is now out for revenge, but his love for the elder Rooney and the politics of the Chicago mob complicate things. Can he outwit hitman / photographer Jude Law long enough to get justice while protecting his young son? This being the Depression, there are Tommy guns, fedoras, Model A Fords, bank robberies, good-natured peasants, and some representations of real-life gangsters like Frank Needy, played by Stanley Tucci. Director Sam Mendes' follow-up to 1999's Best Picture winner American Beauty was itself nominated for 6 Oscars and won 1 for cinematographer Conrad Hall. And this was the final screen appearance of Paul Newman. He did some voice work in Cars and other things later on, and directed some and I think was on some TV shows. But this was his final film appearance. What did you think of looking back on The Road to Perdition?
Well, I hadn't seen this since I saw it in the theater in 2002. And I gotta say, it landed a little different for me this time.
Okay.
I remember being fairly underwhelmed by it.
Okay.
But I think that there are some themes in it, particularly about, there's a recurring theme about not wanting your son to have some of the same issues and negative points that you do that resonate with me more now than they did 20 years ago before I was a father.
Right.
So I was emotionally connected to things in the third part of this film that maybe I wouldn't have been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, this movie, in my eyes, is up a few notches from where it was.
Okay.
I also credit maybe a little more space between some of Hanks's more well-known roles. Seen him do a lot of things besides Forrest Gump and play Jim Lovell in
Apollo 13.
Apollo 13.
Yeah.
To where I'm not so attached to him being the great guy all the time necessarily.
This is definitely against type, obviously.
It's not really though in the long run. He is a person who is capable of killing, but he's not he's the killer with a heart of gold, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now, is that believable? I think it is in this world. Is he a little bit? No, I'm not saying that's an excuse.
Yeah.
But a bad person can be a good father. I mean, a person who's going to hell for the things they've done can be a good father to their children.
I certainly think we're used to the concept of people in the mafia, or not in the mafia in this, but in the mob in this case, compartmentalizing, being one person at home and another person out whenever they're, doing their jobs. We're going to disagree. We're going to be over two on this one. I remember seeing this movie, parts of this movie anyway, back in 2002, and it just not clicking for me. And it did not click here. It's hard for me to pinpoint exactly what is wrong with this movie.
I'm not without my issues either,
except for everything. I mean, everything is just a little bit wrong. There's nothing in this movie that's terrible, but everything is just a little bit wrong. I just really don't buy anything about it in little ways. The characters never quite click. It never finds a pace. Its tone is just relentlessly humorless and dour. And it never really figures out what Sullivan's motivation is, whether he's out for revenge, or sometimes he's just trying to get by and protect his son. And it can't even really...
I think it changes from moment to moment.
Well, and it really can't even really figure out which of the Michaels is telling the story. I mean, at first, the initial bookend voiceover narrations lead you to believe this is going to be the kind of told from the kid's point of view. But they drop that they more or less drop that very quickly. And
would you have preferred a voiceover that occurred over the course?
I would not have, but I would have. I guess. I guess I would have. What I would have liked is more of a commitment to telling me more about Michael Sullivan Sr. and getting more into that character. But they can't, and they can't because of the casting of Tom Hanks.
I don't disagree with you there.
And this is, I was not surprised. I did a little research, and I'm not surprised to find out that so this is based on a graphic novel, and I'm not at all surprised to find out that the Michael Sullivan in the graphic novel is much more violent and temperamental, right? But you can't have that once you cast Tom Hanks.
From what I understand, though, the graphic novel is nearly devoid of dialogue through long periods.
Okay.
And this movie does some cool things without dialogue, too. There's a sequence which
I would have preferred less dialogue, actually.
There's a sequence that I think is really exemplary in this movie when he plays the piano with Rooney at the party.
Uh-huh.
And the entire dynamic between Rooney, his son, and Michael is spelled out without a single word being said.
Yeah.
And there's a few other instances in this movie where that kind of not done quite that well.
Right. You can tell that Rooney really, that his adopted son Sullivan is really his favorite, right?
Yeah, and there's the cracks being seen. Daniel Craig's character is trying to put on a brave face and smile, but it slowly starts to kind of fade away because he's jealous of the relationship that Sullivan has with him. Now, are there issues with the character that Paul Newman plays? And he seems like, I've got to protect my own son, but then how much did you really love Sullivan to begin with? If that's how quickly, my problem with this movie is how fast people change their mind at times, and I don't understand why Jude Law's character, except for he came from a comic book, and that's one reason. Why does he have to be such a ghoul?
Right? Why does he have to be so? Yeah, you have to. They have to find ways to sort of make him interesting.
But the ghoulishness of him probably comes from it's drawn. Because that makes him distinct.
There are a couple scenes in this movie I really liked. I mean, I really liked the way the scene where he catches Jude Law. Even though I wasn't crazy about Jude Law or his performance or his character, when he catches up to him in the diner, and there's this really sort of tense scene between them. That was well done. I thought there was another scene that escaped.
There's a scene whenever he goes in to collect from somebody who
yes,
but
exactly.
It's turned out that he's
exactly he goes into Right. He goes into to collect on somebody who's coming up short in their payments. But the situation turns out to
the
not,
note that
not be
that he's been given to hand to the person isn't a threat. It's telling him to kill Sullivan.
Right. Yeah. It's not what he.
Yeah. That was a good scene too.
That was a good scene too. So I think that all the problems I have with this movie, I think, can be traced back to the really bad casting. I think the casting here is terrible. I think this is the kind of movie that Tom Hanks clearly wanted to play against the type, at least the type that he had at the time, and maybe wanted to be a more sinister character. But then what happens? Well, immediately he comes aboard, and then immediately they have to kind of write around the fact that he's Tom Hanks, and you can't have Tom Hanks. I mean, you couldn't show Tom Hanks being the one to sort of arbitrarily shoot somebody or torture a helpless person or do any of the sorts of things that establish the viciousness of mob characters, right? Secondly, I don't buy Daniel. Daniel Craig's a fine actor. He can't help but shake his sort of cool calculation, though, and he is not at all good at being this sort of emotionally volatile.
See, that worked better for me than it did for you, because even the first time I watched this movie, I thought he comes off just like a perfect. I actually really liked it, because I thought he came off as a whiny, that perfect father. I mean, son of the. I thought he pulled that off quite well. Maybe if I had seen this, but you know what? I am not a fan of his either. So that might help. You may see, like you said something like maybe a cool demeanor that he has.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
To me, that doesn't help his bond either. He's just a dude to me.
I think he has a certain menace, but he doesn't have the kind of Sonny Corleone. Sort of Joe Pesci and Goodfellas menace that this character has. This character is kind of supposed to be out of control.
See, I thought
emotionally
volatile. He sold that. He's just such a fuck up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
he's a disappointment to his father because he doesn't do anything right.
Yeah,
that's what I thought they were going for here. He's a menace because he's volatile, and he's volatile because he's inept. That's how I took this.
Still though, and maybe this is just. I didn't see this movie when it came out, and now Daniel Craig has spent 20 years sort of developing a kind of screen persona.
And I think
and maybe it's just hard to retroactively
I think that's a fair
that.
thing because it's hard to do that.
Yeah. Well,
sometimes the performance can make you totally forget what you've seen previously.
Yeah.
But it's not all the time.
And that brings me to my third sort of miscast is, as we said, with Jude Law, right? He's got really bad teeth in this, and he's kind of raising and lowering his eyebrows in a menacing way, but he never stops being Jude Law, right? And it would have been nice. This movie would have benefited from maybe casting one star, maybe Paul Newman in his part, and maybe one other star, and then just going with sort of unknowns in the other role. Now that I say that, it's a little unfair because Daniel Craig was unknown at this time, right?
Well, for the most part,
yeah. But the whole thing just it sort of smacked to me that not just of bad casting, but the ways in which bad casting has this sort of domino effect that good casting leads to actors kind of finding the core of their role that goes beyond the script, and then the rewrites sort of building around that. And so if you cast your movie well, your script gets better, and things begin to sort of click and fall into place. And I feel like this is a movie that was waiting for all of that to kind of come together and clicking.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
I'm not at all trying to make the argument that this is a great film. I think it's trying to be a great film.
Yes, it's trying.
But in my mind,
really
it went from kind of meh to a good film.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because I think in the third act, especially, that some of the themes did resonate with me way more than they did.
And I'll grant you that. I don't have kids. You have, in fact, you have a son, and so I can see how those themes resonate.
They can prey on
They feel less abstract and more visceral for you. I feel, in terms of more sort of nuts and bolts aspects of this movie, I feel also, not only is the casting bad, I feel the editing's bad too. I feel like that the the pace of this movie, there are certain points in this movie where you hit a plot point, you hit a sort of a surprise and a turning point, and that's the point where your movie needs to move faster, right? Literally move faster and be edited more crisply, and events begin to occur in shorter order.
It doesn't build to a crescendo like it could.
Well, we'll get to the crescendo in a second, but even on the way to the crescendo, there are a lot of scenes where just when we think the movie's going to start sort of picking up pace, then all of a sudden we cut to these, these sort of meditative scenes of Tom Hanks's character lighting candles in a church or something,
right?
Or like a really kind of whimsical kind of montage of them just kind of driving across the country, right? And it loses any sort of sense of kind of forward momentum that. I mean, it's really on the editor, right? It's really, and the director. That said, this movie leads up to an absolutely unforgivable anticlimax. The main conflict in this movie is resolved in a way that if you sneeze, you miss it, and there's just no. I mean, I don't know. We don't worry about running these vintage movies.
No, we don't.
I don't necessarily want to see a big fist fight between, with the Daniel Craig character, or the Daniel Craig character, running away and climbing to the top of a building.
Right, though,
and get
that
thrown
does.
Off. But he
that
walks
occurs
in
a very unsatisfying way.
It's totally unsatisfying, right? In a way that seems in a way that's obviously intentional. It's getting at something, but all it did for me was make me sort of laugh out loud.
No, I agree that is an issue.
Yeah. So it seems like so much time was spent on the set design on this movie. Like every overcoat and vintage telephone looking just right, and all of the other the other sort of mechanics.
I wanted to talk about that a little bit. This movie was filmed almost entirely in Illinois.
Yeah.
In an area up by Geneva, Illinois, which I'm very familiar with. They travel to a couple times a year for a big show.
And is that the Quad City area?
No, it's in Kane County, which is due west of Chicago. It's like the outermost suburbs.
Oh, okay.
Where if you go another 10 miles, it's farmland, but it's still suburby.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And there are all the towns, St. Charles, Geneva, Elgin, have these oldie looking downtowns that you can set dress to look very period, easily.
Right, you can make it look like.
But so it was kind of interesting. And the land up there is particularly flat. And so you saw some of that in this.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I want to mention, the kid in this, Tyler Hoechlin. Kind of blew my mind. He's playing Superman in the new Lois and Superman.
Yeah.
Which I hadn't probably seen him much in between.
My wife
like, why does that kid look familiar? And I was like,
yeah.
Wow.
My wife had pointed that going into this. She had when I told her we were watching this, she looked this up and she's like, oh.
Yeah, I was pretty.
Yeah, Tyler Hoechlin.
Pretty blown away by that.
Yeah, I thought this movie was dour and pretty boring, and it just didn't work for me. I want to go back to something you said though. This movie really wants to be. It really wants to be important. It really wants to be an Oscar movie.
It's designed from the ground up to be the next big crime drama,
prestige movie. But what's missing most of all of this movie as an entry into the very storied mob genre, what's really missing from this movie, I think, is any addition, any sort of specific take on what the mob means. In The Godfather, you have the mob as family. In Goodfellas, you have the mob as celebrity. In a movie like Donnie Brasco, you have the mob as just a job, except you can't quit the job. You get shot if you don't meet your quotas, right?
In Donnie Brasco, it's a family, but it's all a big lie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. So this doesn't have an angle on what the mob is supposed to mean to us, besides this just being kind of an adventure story, which isn't necessarily bad. It's just that adventure I thought was not very well told.
What I think this movie lacks the most is the stakes are high in this movie, but it doesn't always feel as high as it could.
Yeah.
There's not. They're being chased by this Jude Law character.
Yeah.
But there's not a relentless feeling to it.
No,
he keeps popping up wherever
right.
they are.
Yeah.
But it's not like
that's
it's almost
exactly
like he's kind of bouncing around and just getting lucky.
That's exactly what I'm talking about the sort of pace in the later part of this movie.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
It's one of the things this movie lacks a little bit.
And I think, they also there's an interesting dynamic here of that this character Michael Sullivan, he's put in this position where he's torn between seeking the vengeance that he's sort of entitled to, and also what that vengeance then is going to do to the final remaining member of his family.
Right.
And that again is an interesting dynamic, but they don't really forefront that, right? They don't really sort of put that out there. And I think they could, like the scene that he has with Stanley Tucci playing Frank Needy, where he goes to, Frank Needy is in charge of the Chicago mob, and one of the first things that Tom Hanks's character does is he goes to him and says, "Well, look, I'm going on a killing spree. I'm going to go get revenge, and I basically want you to say
look the other way.
Yeah, look the other way, right?" And in that conversation, I mean, Needy then sort of tries to talk sense to him, but that scene just is missing. It's missing some parts. It's missing a scene where they bring out the fact that, well, this mission of revenge is really at odds with his raising of his child in every single way, right? In providing an example and putting him at risk, and that stuff could have been brought more to the forefront. And instead, I just don't know. I don't know what this movie has on its mind. I don't know what this movie's priorities really are, because it doesn't have. I look at another mob movie that I don't think is very good, and doesn't add much to the genre. The Coen Brothers' Miller's Crossing, but at least that movie really had style, right? You watch that movie and you really think, oh, well, this is sort of what. They got excited because they wanted to make a kind of flashy, stylish mob movie.
That's
right?
how all Coen Brothers movies.
Yeah, well,
they got excited because they wanted to make a
right. But even this doesn't really seem. It never seems like it's having any fun in that way, and it seems like it's so serious. It seems like it has important themes on its mind, but it never really.
I know from what I know about and again, I've never personally read the graphic novel, but I know it's very, very dour.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah. But I mean, if you're going to be that dour, then I think I think certainly Tom Hanks is not your.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it didn't bother me as much as it did. I think the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can't fight over some of your points.
Nonetheless, when was the last time we were 0 for 2 on movies? When was the last time we disagreed about both movies that we've watched?
Well, I don't know how strongly we disagree here. I just
okay.
my opinion of it went up.
Okay,
but I don't think this is a great movie. I'm maybe in the B- C+ territory for what I'd grade this movie.
Yeah,
I wasn't offended by any of it.
Yeah,
I enjoyed watching it. I think for the most part.
Yeah,
which I wouldn't have necessarily said before, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, Conrad Hall won an Oscar for the cinematography on this, and I think the details and the set design and the lighting. I mean, that's all there. To me, that's all there really is to this movie, and that it looks fine. In fact, if anything, it's overcooked. If anything, the scenes are so kind of perfectly shot that it doesn't it sort of subtracts from the
there's something in here I never really don't see much in movies.
Of the movie.
It's cold enough to where there's a snow on the ground, but it's raining that day.
Yeah, at one point
you don't see that very often.
Yeah,
it's usually rainy or snowy or
although we know living in the Midwest that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
There could be snow on the ground. It could be pouring down raining.
And we mentioned in the break between the two halves that we talked pretty long about KIMI in the first half. You probably got more to say when we disagree than not. There's more exchanges.
Yeah.
You can only say, "Oh yeah, we both agree on that for so long."
We have more fun when we agree that a movie
something
is bad.
sucks. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely the high point.
Right. Like Death on the Nile, but they can't all be Death on the Nile. So,
all right. Well, I guess let's pick a random movie for next week.
Oh, okay.
Here it goes. Wow, we got a comedy, Jason. 1988's Red Heat.
Red Heat.
Jim Belushi, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I was seeing so many movies at that time. I probably saw this one, but it made no impression.
I think I rented it as a kid, but man, I don't remember anything about it.
I mean, what a dream pairing of Jim Belushi and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, was this the only movie they did together? Is
those two?
Yeah,
I certainly hope so.
No, it just seems like the sort of thing that couldn't miss.
The de facto Belushi Schwarzenegger trilogy.
Right. So, okay. Well, let's see what that's about.
Yeah, let's do that. And then we're going to pair that up with a different movie. It's Broken Record time.
Yep.
It's going to be a movie, and it's going to be something we don't know yet. I look forward to the period of time when we can just look at the schedule and determine what's coming up.
Right. There's just like a list.
I guess in 2 weeks we've got Batman.
Oh, is that in 2 weeks?
Yeah, March 4th.
Oh, okay. Oh. Almost.
That should start the season of a more normal release schedule. Well, I guess that'll wrap it up for this week's episode of Cinema Spin. We'll catch you next week with a brand new show. Goodbye for now.
Bye.